I'm Glenn McGuinness. This week on Outburst, Canada's role in the world.
I'm Ifeanyi Emesih and I'm in Halifax. The World Economic Forum has sparked a global conversation among young immigrants on a local level who are looking to make a change. Today, I'm going to be talking to some of these individuals about Canada's role in the world and from their perspective, how they think the world sees Canada.
I'm Molly Thomas in the Cox's Bazar region of Bangladesh. We are in the world's largest refugee camp. What is Canada's role beyond our own borders? We speak to Canadians offering their skills and expertise to some of the most persecuted people on the planet.
Honestly, every single time I go into the camps, it's just like my mind just is blown by just the sheer size of everything.
We're here with Alyssa Horvat, a recent graduate of the Monk School of Global Affairs back in Canada, but shortly after graduation actually came over to Bangladesh to help here with the Rohingya crisis. Alyssa, what is it like? I mean, going from the classroom to frontline helping people in need like that?
I would say it's very interesting because it really brings together what you learn in class and what you read on the news every day and kind of hits you in the face with all of that all at once. For me, within my first month, I was able to actually have the opportunity to talk to beneficiaries here. And I actually had to leave the discussion with them because I just couldn't deal with the emotions because I had been reading and I'd been following what was going on for the months prior to actually arriving. But when I actually got here, I think I just wasn't ready for how much it was going to hit me. But that being said, it really gave me this renewed desire to do as much as I could to help while I was here.
What is it like? I mean, part of probably that what hits you is that these people are young. A lot of them are young, right? So many school-age kids, so many kids that are adolescents and don't have anything to do. Do you feel a special sense of maybe a camaraderie around that because you also are young?
I mean, I find a lot of the time when I'm in the camps and I'm around the Rohingya population, I always tend to just smile at them and kind of just try and convey with my eyes what I can't necessarily say with my words, that, you know, I'm here for you, I understand you, and that kind of thing. And it's upsetting to see a lot of young people that are here in this situation where they can't necessarily have the opportunities that I had, but then I also know that everyone's involvement here, my organization's involvement, and just the whole response is trying to build that up and trying to find some way to mitigate that problem.
Do people know you're Canadian? I always wonder. I see the Canada flag up on many different places around. Do they know? Do they care?
I would say that if they do know, that they do care and they do appreciate it. For example, when we go on donor visits when Bob Ray has come, or we've had other higher level officials from Global Affairs Canada, sometimes the beneficiaries will have little signs that say like, thank you Canada, that sort of thing. On a day-to-day basis, I don't know if they know as much. I think they just assume we're not from here. But in the opportunity that they do get to find out we are, they tend to be grateful and happy that Canada's involved.
There's so many young Canadians out there that have no idea what's going on here in Bangladesh. What would you say to them? What would be your message to, I guess, your peers?
Well, I would say that this is something that we shouldn't just forget and we shouldn't just let it slide. Canada's been really vocal throughout this crisis, and just in terms of, keeping it in the news and making statements about and advocating for the Rohingya people, and obviously providing financial support as well over the shorter term and the longer term. I know IOM has benefited significantly from that as well. So I would say just, keep the government keeping this on its agenda, keep involved, keep kind of pushing for more to be done in that advocacy, because I think that is really what's going to be needed in the long term.
Sarah, Canada has been very vocal on the Rohingya crisis politically. You're working frontline though on the humanitarian lines. How does that make you feel?
Well, Canada is one of the donors here, which playing a very big role because they are very flexible with their donation, and it makes it very, very easy for us because we can actually use the donation based on the needs on the ground and the priorities. So it's very nice to be a Canadian here because you see Canadian flags everywhere, and that people knows about Canada here.
Do they? That's always my question. Do they know? Do the kids know when they talk to you?
Yeah, well, the small kids probably not, but most of the people, because even if they don't ask you as the first question when they meet you, the second question definitely is about your country and which country you are coming from.
Yeah,
so
we felt that too.
yes, so Canada, when you mention Canada, they are all like, wow, Canada is a great country. Or sometimes even they have some families back in Canada, so they
Yes.
are quite familiar with Canada. They know Justin Trudeau, so
He's kind of famous.
yes, and they sometimes even talk about the climate, that it's cold in compare with here, and how I deal here with this heat. So yeah.
Sarah, what is Canada's role, do you think, in this crisis? Because now we're past the year point, and we kind of have to figure out which way we're going to move.
Yeah, I think Canada had a, big role so far in terms of women and girls' rights and their protection. It's very important to keep doing it because 80% of the people here in the camp is kids and women. Most of them, they are coming from small communities, and they are not used to this, big, huge area, so many people. They used to live together for years and years. They knew all the secrets about each other. So now here with so many unfamiliar faces, it's, such a simple thing. Just a padlock can give us so much security and safety.
Is this job emotional for you?
Sometimes yes, because you see all these people. I'm spending lots of time here in the camps with their kids, babies, women, and when I see like all these pregnant women trying to, climb all these hilly areas, during monsoon when everywhere is muddy and it's not easy even for me with all these proper shoes, it's difficult. So yeah, sometimes it is emotional. You get emotional, and at the end of the day, you think, okay, I'm doing something. Yeah.
Thanks for what you do.
What is Canada's role in the world today?
Yeah, being a role model for the rest of the world, that's the main part right now. Like if you ask anyone else what's great about Canada, they will say that people are polite and respectful, and we should learn a lot from the Canadians, and I agree. I totally agree with that. So yeah, let's just show the rest of the world how you should behave in a community, in a human community. So
Canada's role in the world today is a nation of multiculturalism, and it's a nation of open borders for people to come in and start their life anew here in a fresh and great opportunity.
I see Canada more as a helping hand to all the countries. More like we're there to help, and we let people know that we're there to be friendly.
We're very open as a country. We're very accepting. Maybe other countries see that and, want to follow our lead.
Canada's role, I don't know, it's diminished since the U.S. government, the current president. I still think we play an important role. I know that in the European countries, a lot of the European countries love Canadians, so I think they look up to us and also watch how we handle our dealings with the U.S. So I think we play an important role. We're a country that is very diverse, and we open our borders and doors to all. And I think that Canada's showing a good example of that. And we have to keep up the work.
Oh, I feel like Canada I feel like our role might be to set proper examples or good examples for others to maybe follow. I feel like there's obviously, like any nation, there's a lot we can improve on. But I think for the most part, I feel like we're doing okay. And maybe share and support other nations to potentially work towards development. I don't know. Yeah. Maybe something like that.
I would echo much of that. I think we're a country that's very multicultural, and I think we have a lot of good things going about our country. And I think, as Anita said, that we can set examples for others and take what others do and maybe reiterate them to apply to us. But in general, I think Canada should be, our role should be one that is fostering collaboration with other countries and just setting a good example.
My name is Natasha Koné. I am from Vancouver originally, and recently, last June, my husband and I decided to move with our 2 children to the Ivory Coast. I am a professional in the mining industry. The thing that I think that Canada brings best to the world is an idea of pluralism. It's a lot of different cultures who are able to respect their culture and then also live together in peace and harmony and share our experiences, our cultural values. And then in my industry, Canada is a great mining country. We have a good background in natural resource management, and I think that we can bring some of those skills. I've lived and worked in lots of places, and what I feel about Canada is an idea of security and safety and acceptance. And, I love Cote d'Ivoire. I have family here and I have friends here, but the safety that I feel in Canada, I don't feel anywhere else in the world. My husband became a Canadian about 1.5 years ago. He's lived in Canada for the last 6 years. We were just in Toronto about 3 weeks ago. It felt like we were home, and my husband is he's Ivorian, but he's also Canadian, and he holds both identities strong. I guess the change that I'd like to see in our country is understanding that we're really strong because we have so many different peoples and cultures together, but that we should remain true to our past. And I sometimes feel like with what's happening in the world, there are different voices and powers trying to change what's fundamentally Canadian. We want to be an inclusive country, and I don't want to change Canada. I want it to remain as it has been grounded and founded. I think that Canada has come to a point right now with, the politics that we're speaking. We're speaking about peace and stability. We're speaking about being leaders in gender equality, and I think that's the role we can play, to be good citizens, to be a model citizen and a model world citizen. And if I can see one role that Canada can play, that's it. Actually, I have 2 people I told I was doing this interview to today. And what they said is, tell the people in Canada that we want to come. And so I think that there's a good view of Canada around the world. We have maintained our good image.
Should human rights be a factor in Canada's trade and foreign aid decisions?
I believe that it is important for Canada to take that into consideration, because if we're not taking that into consideration, we're not taking into consideration the humanity of the world and respecting what everyone's basic needs are.
Yes, human rights should be a factor, and they should be a factor in trade and foreign relations with countries such as Saudi Arabia. And could I specifically mention the sale of armored vehicles to the Saudis in the wake of recent learnings about that government? Yes, they should be a factor.
Yeah, in certain circumstances, yeah. But, it's pretty tricky though sometimes with whatever countries you're dealing with. It maybe like a dictatorship that doesn't really want to listen. And
absolutely, they should. Why? Because human rights are very important, and we cannot be seen as putting money over people. And that's why we cannot be seen to be similar to the United States or other countries. Canada is different, where we're in a country where we're more inclusive, and you can tell by my accent, obviously. And it's important to make a stand in the world.
Definitely, yes. Human rights is top priority.
Well, it is a top priority, but it's a hard call to implement somebody else's plans or whatever, but it's better to lead by example.
Right, and we shouldn't be rewarding other countries for doing horrible violations against human rights in their own country. Our country shouldn't reward them with trade deals or whatever. There should be some consequences as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, of course. I would say, of course, human rights. We maybe have the impression sometimes the economics and finance and driving the world, maybe respecting some people would be good enough as well, and taking into consideration that we are pretty lucky to be here at some point. I mean, I always feel very lucky to be here in Canada, to have opportunity, to have a safe life, and it's not like this all over the world. Who is responsible? I mean, I don't want to give names on it, but maybe yes, helping people, supporting people, not only for charity, but because we have a responsibility around the world. Because I mean, I would say the way our people are living right now is maybe the result of some countries' action by the past. So yeah, I would say human rights should be at the first place, before we act.
Which country plays host to the G20 summit this year?
Oh, geez, I should know that. Russia.
Is it? No, it's not Halifax in Canada.
Give me a guess.
Is it maybe England? I don't know. I have no idea at all.
Your choices are Argentina, Germany, or Russia.
I'll say Germany.
Russia. I'm gonna go out on a limb.
Is it Canada?
I'm gonna say Argentina.
I was gonna guess that.
The answer is Argentina.
Oh!
You did very well today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
On November 30th and December 1st of 2018, Buenos Aires, Argentina will play host to the 2018 G20 Summit. The Group of 20 is an international forum that brings the world's 20 top industrial economies. Its primary focus is to discuss policy, which can promote financial stability around the world. Founded in 1999, it consists of 19 individual nations plus the European Union, which accounts for 85% of the world's GDP and 2/3 of its population. Initially, it began as a meeting of the world's finance ministers and central bank governors. In 2008, the first G20 Leaders Summit was held to respond to the global financial crisis. The summit is considered a model for global cooperation. What should be Canada's goals at the G20 Summit?
Well, I think that Canada should be sincerely supporting initiatives around the world to reduce the carbon emissions and needs to step up to the plate here as well, providing greater incentives for people to reduce their carbon emissions, whether it's industry or individuals. So I think a lot can be done.
I think just letting people know how important it is to make that effort in your life to reduce plastic and not litter, and just the very normal things that you would think are very easy to do, but a lot of people forget about it. So just raising that awareness and letting people know that if you bring your own bags and if you try just a little bit in your life to not use so much plastic and garbage and just be a little bit less, just a little bit more aware of your surroundings. And I think if every single person did that, it helps a lot in general. And you can see that in grocery stores and everywhere. If one person stops using so many bags, the other person will notice, oh, okay, I will do that too. So just that, I guess, raising that awareness, I think, is quite important.
Well, I personally believe Canada should try and go back to more of a peacekeeping role as they once historically had. For instance, I don't personally think that Canada's concerns should be as economic at the moment, be it establishing pipelines or things like that.
I think try to restore more harmony in international relationships, which I think has been recently degraded a bit. So try to bring back a little more harmony, a little more cooperation.
I would agree that environmental stewardship should be a big goal for Canada. I think Canada has a great place to play leadership in that. I think also in terms of where we are as Canadians, reconciliation and Indigenous rights should be another conversation that we bring forward at the G20.
Renewable resources, how to find a way to keep your country sustainable in terms of we were having this discussion before of just Canada, when the oil runs out, what are you going to do? Australia's the same with mining and resources. At one point the resources are going to be depleted and they've put all of their sort of eggs into one basket in terms of a resource, and once that runs out, then where are you going to be? So in terms of renewable energy, harnessing the power of the sun, all that kind of stuff.
As part of the G20, I think Canada needs to look at its own in-house politics and the way it's treated the Indigenous people and the way it's putting a lot of funds in towards keeping the indigenous people segregated instead of having them somewhat included and letting them run their own part of the house. For me, it would be very important that Canada would look at how they would get that funds to the right people within the communities, the isolated communities.
All right, welcome everyone to our roundtable conversation. Today we will just be talking about how the world sees Canada and how Canada sees the world. One of the first questions, or one of the first...
I would say, well, right now Canada, obviously in the last couple of years, has been focused on like the reconciliation part with Indigenous people. And I think with where we're at in the world right now, for Canada to be a leading voice on reconciliation with their own people, I think could be a good example for countries like the United States.
Yeah, that's a good thought. What do you think?
I think Canada has a unique opportunity to put some focus, perhaps reaffirm some of our climate change goals. So I think that is a golden opportunity for us.
Being an international person, I mean, I came from India, and I decided to stay here, and that's why I'm working here. So being an international person, I see there's like a unique situation in this country compared to many other countries, which is that the diversity.
Yeah.
And I think that can be leveraged in different ways.
With a lot of people starting to, I guess, question U.S. dominance, Canada has an opportunity to take a different approach. I mean, you see with the U.S. pulling away from some of the multilateral kind of structures that have been there and going with a U.S. first approach. Canada could, take the different approach and decide, we are going to band together as nations, working together with other countries, other industrialized nations, to address some of these issues like the migration crisis, refugee crisis, and much bigger issues such as environmental issues and things like that. Can Canada promote international human rights and maintain trade partnership with countries where these issues are a thing of concern?
Yes, but again, it goes back to if we are going to take that role on an international stage to promote human rights, we need to make sure that we're covering all our bases in Canada.
Okay. When you say covering all our bases, what do you mean exactly?
The reconciliation part.
Okay.
I think that humanitarian efforts, personally, I see it being very much a part of who Canada is or what Canada is. I think across the world, I think I'm right in saying, people have this perception that Canadians are the nicest people around.
Yeah. Yes.
Right? So I'd like to think that it is very much of who we are as a people, no matter where you come from. But it's got to be an incredibly difficult conversation to have, especially looking at trade agreements. There's so much money at stake, so much at stake for people, for suppliers, for people who are buying. But we must not forget what makes us Canadian. And I think being humanitarian is part of that.
Yeah.
Is it going to be an extremely difficult conversation to have at the higher level? Yes. But if it were easy, it would have been done long ago, right? So I think, yes, it needs to be a part of how we look at our trade agreements with other countries.
Yeah. So are you alluding to the fact that if we don't agree with a country about their humanitarian activities, we shouldn't engage in trade?
Not necessarily. I think it's not as simple and cut and dry as that. I think context matters.
I think one of the challenges that faces Canada as well with human rights in the way that they're made universal is a lot of the pushback that comes from some of the cultural context in which human rights are, upheld, because it doesn't always work as very black and white to say that this is a human rights violation and therefore, such and such should be treated as such and such.
Definitely a cultural context.
There's a cultural context that needs to be understood, and that makes, any sort of diplomatic relations very challenging, because to say on one hand Canada can look the other way and continue their trade on the economic side of things, but socially and politically, they are up in arms with these so-called human rights violations. How do you marry the two areas, right? Yeah. It's quite tricky. Now, my final question is, now within the G20 and outside of the G20, how do you think the world and other countries view Canada?
I have a one-word answer to that. I think hopeful.
Hopeful?
Yeah, because I think a lot of countries know what our neighbors are going through.
Yeah.
And I think a few of them are probably looking to us and watching us closely to
Yes.
see what is our response now.
Yes, and how we can lead in a positive light.
Right. Do we emulate them or
Yeah.
do we stand apart?
Yeah. I'd say one word would be primed, and I mean primed that Canada's ready for a big move. So they've been pushed onto the stage. You know, someone has. So the spotlight. Yeah, they're on the spotlight. Okay. It's now is the time for them to assert themselves globally, to kind of shed maybe this humanitarian leadership role that they've had for so long. Yeah. That's no longer at the forefront of what's going on. Okay. You know, I think it's time. Okay. Yeah. How about you?
In my mind, say if I take a helicopter view of, maybe not a helicopter view, maybe from the space, maybe from the moon, and if I look at Canada, I would see Canada as someone or like a place which is a leader. Yeah. So our way of leading could be more like, you know, we are like kind of like the nudgers, that we do things in a certain way, and we are promoting like multiculturalism and then leveraging skills of refugees or like immigrants to expand our economy, and then show the rest of the world that how it is done.
Yeah.
I think Canada is seen as a safe zone, right, and a happy place from the rest of the world looking in. And as we open up our doors for more immigrants to come, you know, we can't get comfortable with that reputation of being a safe zone. We also need to double down and make sure that everyone's taken care of, and that, you know, we don't have to deal with, you know, the rise of populism.
The work's not over.
There you go. Far from it.
Well, we're just getting started, really.
When I joined the space program 9 years ago, and you know, very humbly walked into the Johnson Space Center, NASA's capital for human spaceflight in Houston, I always felt like I was stepping into big shoes with the likes of Julie Payette and Chris Hadfield and Marc Garneau and Dave Williams and Bob Thursh and all those people that flew before us in space. And first thing that struck me is the incredible reputation Canada has in the space program around the world. We're clearly not a big player, but we're very respected, very professional, very knowledgeable, not only for robotics, but in our general judgment, and we're kind of good, you know, advisors, I think is the way I feel about it. And so it was very touching almost, I would say, to realize how well respected Canada has become in the field of space exploration. And we're a very trusted partner, and that is kudos to, of course, the thousands of brilliant engineers who have worked on robotics over the decades, and everybody else who's involved in the Canadian space program. So I think it's something we can all be very, very proud of. For space exploration, that is also a huge part of who we are as a nation of explorers. And now the Concert of Nations is getting ready to embark on the next step, now that we are wrapping up the program of the space station and going back to the moon and deeper into space, eventually to Mars. So I believe that you know, it's Canada's has a big role to play in that community. To me, it's the kind of innovative, creative, bold Canada that I would like my children to live in. So, and the spin-offs we get from space exploration are huge. This is really somewhere where Canada is there to stay in space.
I'm Glenn McGuinness. On behalf of my colleagues at the Cable Public Affairs Channel, thanks for watching this week's episode of Outburst. And thanks for your comments and emails on past shows as well. In future episodes, we'll be sharing some of these comments with you. If you'd like to weigh in on this show or any other show, our email is outburst@cpac.ca. You can also find us on Facebook. It's your turn to speak up, and we're listening.